What are some mysteries that have actually been solved? Bermuda Triangle turns out to have the expected number of mishaps at sea given the amount of shipping that traverses it. They found the remains of the entire Romanov family, so Anastasia did not survive, and neither did any member of Nicholas II's immediate family. The Solway Firth spaceman became popular in ufology as it supposedly showed a mysterious figure in the background. For 50 years, no one quite knew what it really was till someone analyzed the photo and concluded it was actually the mother who accidentally walked into the photo. The reason she looked like a spaceman was because of overexposure. The bloop sound that was recorded in the Pacific Ocean that baffled scientists was finally found to be an icequake. There was one maybe not that widely known about a guy who was found to have committed suicide in a motel in Washington or Oregon. No idea who it was, strange note crumpled in the garbage that just said suicide. No one ever came forward to say they knew him based on his picture and papers. Was on all the unknown person forums, even here on Reddit. Just one of those cases that was interesting to me. And, after many years, they used the DNA family matching thing and found his family. His family just thought he just went off and was living his life. How to make gold from lead. Hundreds of years the alchemists tried it unsuccessfully. Today it is possible using a particle accelerator. However, it is far from cost-efficient. Mining gold is orders of magnitudes cheaper. The rediscoveries of lost cities such as the rediscovery of the location of Pompeii in 1748. The rediscovery of the location of Herculaneum in 1709. The discovery of the location of Machu Picchu in 1911. Whether the Titanic sank in one piece or not. Many discounted those survivors who said they saw her split in two because they had a hard time believing such a mighty ship could rip apart like that. It wasn't until Ballard and his crew found her that the truth was revealed. The boy in the box has been identified as Joseph Augustus Sorelli, although his homicide is still an open investigation. Elisa Lam, the woman found dead in the water tank on top of a hotel in Los Angeles. It wasn't a murder or ghost, she was mentally ill having a bipolar episode. How caterpillars become butterflies. When I was 12, I wanted to go university to be the first person to discover how they do it. Once caterpillars have a cocoon, they secrete an enzyme that turns them into a puddle of stem cell-filled goop, and then that becomes a butterfly. That stranded cosmonaut recording is 99% likely to be a hoax. Many have discredited if the brothers' technology was even capable of picking up the signal of a cosmonaut who's drifted off course. But the real smoking gun is that the woman in the audio recording is speaking in broken Russian, and the two brothers who picked up the signal had a sister who was currently learning Russian, which would explain the limited vocabulary and pronunciation issues that skeptics have pointed out. Torosaurus was actually a mature Triceratops. Nanotyrannus was a baby T-Rex. Stygimoloch and Dracorex are younger Pachycephalosaurus skeletons. Anatodoton was a grown-up Edmontosaurus, and I think there was a few others, just because baby dinosaurs looked drastically different than adults. The Roanoke colony wasn't murdered by natives or kidnapped by aliens. They joined the local native tribe. We can tell because people in the tribe were born with blonde hair and blue eyes for decades after the colonials went missing. Most dinosaurs would likely have made some variation of a honk bark. Jurassic Park got a peek close with the sound of their raptors. Also, the Moai heads have bodies, and they just look like normal guys. The two ships of the lost Franklin expedition of 1845 were both found in the last decade, sunk in the Northwest Passage, northern Canada. The mystery of what happened to the crew 126 men I think has been speculated upon with plenty of solid theories, but very few remains have been found. The ships are still being examined and may contain more clues. The Lady of the Dunes was an unidentified woman who had been murdered and left in the dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. What made her murder unique, besides being a cold case for years, was one theory about who she was. Stephen King's son noticed a woman in the movie Jaws that looked identical to the Lady of the Dunes, and Jaws was filmed near the area too. However, she has recently been identified as Ruth Marie Terry. They believe her husband murdered her as he had a criminal record with his past wives beforehand. Elisa Lam could have gotten both on the roof and into the water tank by herself, and her family does not think any foul play was involved, as Elisa had mental health problems and they were used to seeing her act strange when off her medication. Spontaneous generation. People used to think flies would spontaneously appear from rotten meat, as every time they had it, flies somehow would appear even though flies were nowhere close when the meat was okay. After observation and experiments, we understood flies landed in the meat, left their eggs, and then more flies would be born and then stay to eat the meat. The luminiferous ether. It was thought to be the medium through which light would travel. Since light could behave like a wave, and waves needed a medium, it was assumed there needed to be a medium for light that was both transparent because we couldn't see it and infinitely rigid because the stiffness of the medium corresponds to wave speed. Turns out, light is an electromagnetic wave that can travel through a vacuum. They recently found out who the Somerton Man was. I hope one day they find the Beaumont children. This will probably be buried, but in 1967 in Georgetown, Kentucky, there was this young woman aged 24 who was murdered and her body was wrapped in a tent. When the authorities found her body, it had decomposed enough to where they couldn't identify her. So they had her body placed in a cemetery and a headstone that just read "Tent Girl." 30 years later, they were able to figure out who she was. Her name was Barbara Ann Hackman. They made her a new headstone, but under her real name it still says Tent Girl. Anytime I walk around in that cemetery and see her grave, I get chills. The mystery of the Mary Toft. In 1726, a woman in England claimed to have given birth to rabbits. While it was believed to be a medical mystery at the time, it was later discovered that the rabbits had been inserted into her womb by a local surgeon. Ships and planes never mysteriously vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. Sinks sank because of rough weather, and planes dropped because they hit airborne pockets of methane and the engines stalled. Thanks to modern navigation, not a single ship or plane sank there in over 20 years. Kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch because it's all sugar. No one knew how the islanders of Easter Island moved their giant heads from one place to another. When asked how they did it, the islanders said they walked them. This sounded impossible and silly to Europeans, so they ignored it. But a team of archaeologists and native islanders a few years back made their own Easter Island head, tied 4 big ropes around it, then had a dozen guys on each rope pull the head side to side. It rocked corner to corner, causing it to walk forward down the road. So definitely not aliens. The bloop was figured out. It was a fucking iceberg. R.I.P. my dreams of some weird sea creature. My socks are not eaten by the laundry machine as I thought for a decennium. They go hiding inside my bedsheets instead. Aerodynamicists understand perfectly well how insects, e.g. bees, fly. It's not the same as aircraft, but the clap-fling mechanism, the vortices they produce, and the resulting thrust and lift have been accurately modeled and match the measurements. The Easter Islanders disappeared, including theories that they cut down all the trees to make rollers for the Moai. It's a totally fabricated theory by Jared Diamond, as the Easter Islands never cut down every trees. In fact, they didn't even use rollers to transport the statues, and they never died out. Their descendants are alive today, with some of them hired as tour guides on the island itself. The Golden State Killer, who goes by many other famous serial killer names including Night Stalker, East Area Rapist, turned out to be an ex-policeman. They finally found him using DNA in 2018, almost 40 years later. Edited to correct typo. So many causes for cancer were once a mystery.